reviewers are human beings, and sometimes you like the idea of a product, and sometimes you don't like the idea of a product. I was hoping the ABS would be good, and it isn't.
Hello, Single Track Podcast listeners. This is Mark here. I'm joined this week by Charlie. Say hello, Charlie.
Watcher.
And I'm joined by Benji. Say hello, Benji.
Hello.
Brilliant. Okay, we've got a lot to get through this week. We're going to start off with a bit of news in brief, then we're going to move on to what's caught your eye this week, and then we've actually finally got an interview from Hannah with Vedangi Kulkarni, who is an Indian endurance cyclist. And in 2018, at the age of just 20, she became the youngest woman to cycle the globe. So that's coming up later. But first of all, let's kick off with a bit of the news that we've had on the website over the last few weeks. And the first thing I wanted to kick off with was we've just run a story, British cycling and concussion. British cycling now has a policy on concussion. And I've written here in my notes, at last. Because they're a little bit I don't know. Are they late to the game on this one? It's a really, really important topic, and we've been talking about it for. It feels like we've been talking about it for years. So it kind of seems odd that British cycling have waited till now to come up with a policy on it. But I mean, it's a good thing that they have.
What was the main thing? It was it Dave Mirror? He was quite early on with his suicide that they thought was due to whatever induced concussion, some kind of depression, I would imagine. That was the first thing I remember.
Dave Mirror, the BMX pro from years ago. Yeah.
And the founder of SE Racing. The founder of SE Racing BMX brand. Similar circumstances. So the thing going on there is it's kind of a micro concussion where lots of small hits add up to the equivalent outcome of big hits. And when I read about this a few years ago, I was thinking, oh, blimey, all those years rattling around on 40mm tyres, drop bars, no suspension, and rattling around on rocky trails and going back up to pick up my fillings.
Yeah. Oh, you're just not using your natural shock absorbers in your arms and legs well enough there, Charlie, surely.
It's a bit of truth in that, but it's like, I think in cycling, mountain biking is just lots of small hits. And if you're riding a rigid bike, some of that's going to get transferred through.
There's an obvious solution here. Don't ride a rigid bike, fundamentally. I mean,
that's catch-22, isn't it? I mean, you wouldn't ride a rigid bike unless you had brain damage. So there you go.
But what if you built a reputation of a bike shop on rigid steel bike packing 29ers and fat bikes? What would you do then?
I mean, we're making light of this, but I mean, it is a serious point. I mean, it's a good thing that British Cycling have done. And I think, to their credit, the reason why they might have been, or they might seem like they're being a bit late, is because it's not a simple matter. I think if you go and look at the story, there's actually some really good comments. And one in particular I want to highlight is a comment from a user called Rexated, who actually explains that he is a consultant neuropsychologist specializing in traumatic brain injury. So, and he's in the comments there explaining how it isn't really a simple issue and it is complex, but this is definitely a move in the right direction and it's a good thing for us all to be aware of. So I think everybody should go and check that news story out and read that and especially dive into the comments. Right, I'm going to move on because the other thing that's happened in the last week is we published a story about redevelopment at Glentress, which is, we were discussing just before this podcast, I'm saying, is Glentress the premier mountain bike resort of the UK?
I would think, I don't know, it used to be, didn't it? My gut feeling would be Bike Park Wales would be, just by virtue of population nearness. Proximity is a good word. Yeah, whenever I see anyone going up Peeblesville, it's to do Tweed, isn't it? Golfer, which is, but I don't know.
Innerleithen's more a prominent resort than Glentress these days? We kind of collectively just say Tweed Valley, don't we?
Yeah, what do you call it when you're talking to your people in your own bubble or whatever it is?
Echo chamber.
In my echo chamber, everyone just does golfing, but I imagine it's rammed at Glentress with people who
I reckon the premier trail centre in the UK would serve better food in the cafe. And for that reason, the trails are great. The food I have serious issues with.
Oh, right.
It's not been
so
for
we're getting
ages.
into it now.
I don't know what would it be. It's probably changed hands twice since I've been there. So that's what it used to do.
I mean, I didn't think it was, but I was up there, I don't know, 6 months ago. I wouldn't say it was bad. It's not notable. But I guess, Charlie, when it comes to food, you have certain standards.
I am a food snob, and
You are.
Heading north of the border is not the best place to start.
Oh, right. We're going to get letters coming in from across the border about that one. I was in Glasgow last weekend. We had some amazing food, I have to say, just to try and head off some of those inevitable complaints. Outraged of Dumfries coming in there. Anyway, the actual news story is about redevelopment. It's a good thing. There's a lot of work going on at Glentress. And I think it's actually tied in with is it the World Championships that's going on in Scotland next year?
Yeah, this year, I think. It'll be the marathon. Is it the marathon in the XC taking place at Glentress? I think.
That's right. All the track
all
cycling stuff's happening in Glasgow, and then all the mountain bike stuff is going to be happening in the Tweed Valley. So I think it's tied in with that. I mean, it's worth checking in on the comments on that and read that story, especially if you are a regular at Glentress, because the actual redevelopment does mean that, and I think a little bit controversially, the car park at the top, Buzzard's Nest car park, is actually going to be shut. And I'm not sure if that's a permanent closure, because they're actually going to put accommodation up there. Where the free ride area is now at Glentress, I think they're going to build in accommodation into the forest, which I guess, I kind of like the idea of that, of getting out of your pod. I'm guessing they're going to be pods. They're all pods these days, aren't they, in the forests? It's the accommodation du jour, isn't it? Pod. Here's a pod. It's just a hut.
It's not a shed.
No, it's not a shed.
Shed. It's a pod.
It's a pod. It's a pod. Come out of your pod and then go straight into the trails. Could be quite cool. But anyway, that's Glentress.
Well, I think they're getting some more kilometres of trail, I think. So they're taking away and then giving back, but they're not giving as many miles as they said they would. There's been some figures massaging or something. I think whatever audience used to do the free ride zone is most definitely not there anymore, because they will be over at Inners. And I think the plans have changed, because then they got awarded after it was ages ago, it was like 2018 or something, and then they got awarded the world champs, and I think probably had to rejig the plans.
The last thing I've got on my actually not the last thing on here, I've got two things to go. It was Women's Day this week, just gone, and we are fundamentally not qualified at all to talk about this, so I'm being a little bit cautious here, because we've got three blokes on this podcast this week. We shouldn't do. So I'm just going to recommend that people go check out the stories that Hannah has published this week, including, I think the highlight is a story that came from issue 15 of Single Track. So we're talking 20 years ago. And it was a discussion on women-specific bikes between Jen, who was our deputy editor, and Jules, who's a long-term contributor. And they were coming at the idea of women-specific bikes from two different viewpoints. And it's a really interesting take. I think basically what we've got there is two very powerful viewpoints about pro-women-specific bikes and also anti-women-specific bikes. There is a view buried in there. It's not so much buried as put right out in front, that it's actually possibly a load of marketing bollocks.
Will I find the words "pink it" and "shrink it"?
You do, yes. Those are in there. But they're in inverted commas, so it's an ironic use. Okay. Don't worry. So, yes. But definitely, everybody should go check that out. That's really good. And lastly, the one thing I want to do before we get on to what's caught your eyes this week is I want to point out to everybody that we have crosswords now on the website. Challenging crosswords. We've launched a crossword feature. So every Monday, we've called it Mental Mondays is what we're calling it at the moment. It may change, who knows. But it's all about testing your general knowledge about mountain biking. There's some cryptic clues in there. I'm not sure this is going to take over the difficulty of the Times crossword. We were just talking about this before, weren't we, Charlie?
Yeah. So
because the success rate of last week's crossword, which is a members only thing, by the way, but there's something there each week for non-members, so you can definitely check it out anyway. But last week, I think the success rate was less than 10%. because some of the clues were easy, some of the clues were hard. There's a couple of cryptic ones in there. I created last week's, by the way, so you can blame it on me. And we were talking, is that too hard? I like a tough crossword. I think it's because there's prizes here as well for winning.
Oh, is there?
Well, personally, my puzzle stamina is low. And I don't need a silly game to tell me I don't know enough. I'm already aware of that. There comes a point, get all the easy ones in. Okay, there's a few challenging ones. And then about 2/3 of the answers in, I'm like, oh, just go away. Sod off. I'm going to do something else. So if I'm your typical audience, I don't think I am, but if I'm your typical audience, you need to make it easier.
You need it a bit easier, do you, Charlie?
Oh, I need
there
it
is
easier.
There is a word search, There's a word search option in there as well. there's also a jigsaw.
Can we do dot to dot?
They probably could. I could probably see there's there's a jigsaw. One of those. What do you call the sliding puzzles? I think you call them sliding puzzles.
Slidey, tiny, frustrating, irritating puzzle.
I find those really difficult. Those sliding puzzles, no matter. And when we're setting them up, we can set them up as difficult as we want. How many rows. And I was setting them up as like the easiest one you can do is a 2x2 grid.
I'd still struggle.
And that took me a while. But anyway, go check out the crosswords if you're a full member. You can give those a go. There are prizes. So what was last week's prizes, Charlie? Was it an ironic prize?
It was a puzzle. It was the single track jigsaw puzzle. So, if you're into puzzles, the prizes are puzzling too.
Yeah, there you go. So, and they'll probably come up with some other interesting prizes over the next few weeks, depending on whether it's popular enough. We'll see. This week's puzzle, which is out on Monday, was it's 30 questions for the crossword, and it was designed by Chips himself. I've checked out some of the... so expect some historical... I'm trying to be diplomatic there.
For the more mature member.
Yes, indeed. Okay, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. At that point, we'll just take a short break, and when we come back, we'll find out what's caught Charlie and Benji's eyes this week. Okay, welcome back, and now we're going to move on to a discussion of what has actually caught the eye of our single track team this week. So we're going to start off with Charlie. Charlie, what's caught your eye this week?
There ain't no crime if there ain't no law, which is a lyric by The Damned. But so in The Guardian, there's a jogging story which has parallels with the cycling world. So one of their columnists loved running, really got into it, and then a lorry mounted the pavement, chased her, and said something along the lines of, I hope you get run over and die. And this was witnessed and still photographs and reported to the police, and nothing happened. And my first thought was like, so just try being a commuter cyclist, try being a roadie or something like that. I've had beer bottles thrown at me. I've rolled in the streets of people who tried to fight me, and it's a horrible world out there amongst the traffic. But then, so the police didn't follow that up until she contacted her MP. Then they followed it up and couldn't get hold of the driver, but could get hold of the trucking company, and so it closed. And their advice was get a GoPro, give us the evidence, and we can prosecute. So that links nicely to my van being by another van, hit and run, smash and dash. Whilst my van was parked up, I managed to get CCTV from a local business, witness all his details. He said the guy was on the phone. The police followed it up. He admitted to being the only driver and having no insurance, and the driver at the time. And you think, well, you've got CCTV, you've got stills, you've got witness statement, you've got a confession. So I followed it up some 18 months later. Said, you did nick him, didn't you? Because I'm still getting loadings of my premium for being an open case and stuff like that. And they said there was an admin error, and after 6 months, the statute of limitations on minor offences runs out, so we've done nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. Everything handed over. Did all the research, all the investigation myself. The insurance company had a recorded confession as well. And there you go. And they've done nothing with it.
So is that case still open on your insurance?
It's still open. So the insurance company handed it over to solicitors to chase up the costs because he wasn't insured. the first lister did nothing with it. So it's still open. I'm getting loaded on my motorcycle policies, my car policy, and also my partner is getting her policy loaded because I'm a named driver, because there's an open case, even though it was hit and run uninsured and so on. So it's probably costing me an extra £300 or £400 this year.
Crikey.
Yeah.
So that's caught your eye this week.
So the on the other side, Matt Page, who organises Battle on the Beach, the beach race down in South Wales, on Facebook, he wears a GoPro or helmet cam, and he's managed to get one guy's gone to court in recent years from his footage, but he reported something like 5 near misses, reported them using the online facility the police have, and that's resulted in 2 convictions. So it's not all doom and gloom. If you do get the footage, the police sometimes do something.
There we go. I'm not sure what we take from that, Charlie.
Cycling on the road, it's dangerous because there's loads of cars and a proportion of those people are assholes.
Benji,
Hello.
what's caught your eye this week?
It's nothing new. I think we've had it in Fresh Goods, not a review. It's coming to reviewing time now, and it's a type of volume spacer that goes in a fork. It's called True Tune is the company. They're kind of semi-affiliated with Manchester University, or certainly the technology is, which is activated carbon. And I am not going to describe it.
Benji is our tech editor.
Yeah, normal volume spacer. It looks very much like that, really. It looks about, 2 or 3 inches long, and it just goes in the top of the fork. And unlike normal volume spacers...
Give us a brief breakdown, or give us a brief explanation for those that don't know. What does a volume spacer do?
A normal volume spacer is there to reduce the air chamber size in your fork, which is, it means you can run, it's a way of getting air springs to behave for people of different weight. So if you're 100 kilos, you can run the same fork as me at 73 kilos. I would run it without volume spacers in, so I can get all the travel out of it, and still have it soft at sag. And you can run it soft at sag and have it to really ramp up at the last 25% of your travel if you weigh a lot more. So it's like a way of tuning the last bit of an air-sprung fork, or air-sprung shock as well, for that matter.
And these volume spacers are really, really simple, ultimately, aren't they? They're just literally a
like
plastic
Duplo.
cylinder.
You click it in, to let all the air out, undo the top cap, click it in, put it back in. It's actually one of the... I think people think that oil's going to explode everywhere, or I need to do shims or something. No, you don't at all. If you can pump up a tyre, you can put a volume spacer in. Though this one looks like a volume spacer, so you think putting something in your fork would reduce the volume of the thing you're putting it in, much like putting your finger in a full glass of water will make the water come out over the top. Eureka and all that. This is made of something called activated carbon, which is something that is Manchester University, isn't it? It's like the graphene bods, aren't they? There's something about Manchester University and super dinky carbon stuff.
So does it compress under air pressure?
I'm not explaining it, Charlie. It's a waste of time. All you need to know is me and Ross. Yeah, it's still got a bit of oil in because it's got lubrication oil from inside the fork. Me and Ross, the other fiddler at Single Track, call this TARDIS token. Right? Because you put something in your fork that should make the air chamber smaller, and it makes it effectively bigger.
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's under... who else uses it? Audi use it in their stuff.
We were talking about this in the office, weren't we? And you were trying to explain it to me then, and I was trying to just rationalise how it could possibly work.
It's something to do with how air molecules attach to surfaces. And my point being of why I'm bringing it, I don't want to talk about it because that's another thing. My main point being My main point being, as a reviewer, am I required to understand this to tell you how it works? And I don't know if I am. Because I also think if you do fully understand it, you might start looking for it. But all I can say is how it rides. And it is like very similar to when you put something like a Megneg chamber on a rear shock, which is literally, it gives you more volume, more space.
I think I've figured out the science behind it. You see, I used to have a 60-kilogram Basset hound who would eat anything, and he had active carbon tablets to stop him farting and smelling really bad. So maybe it stops your fork farting.
Well,
that's active charcoal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't that a shot you can have? If you know,
Yeah,
I think it is.
a shot of active charcoal.
It's called activated carbon. Oh, it's carbon this. So activated carbon, yeah. So read about it if you want to have a go. People start to pipe up about something called Boyle's Law. And then...
Whose law?
I don't know. Susan Boyle. No idea. But anyway, but there's also something that I do know how it works, but I can't feel it working on the bike, which is ABS brakes.
Yes.
Which is on the same bike at the moment, ironically. So...
Who makes these ABS brakes?
Magura. They've made ABS brakes for a while, and this is the latest version. I can still get the front to lock up. And I've even, not illegally, I've even ill-advisedly connected it via the Apple App and Ding Dong and set it to not off-road. I think I've set it to all-road currently, which is gravel, which they say should, the ABS anti-lock brakes should cut in quicker. But still, don't know. Like I'm still sliding around on mud with the front wheel locked up. So,
is it meant for like the sort of leisure commuter e-bike market? Do you think?
I think it's very aimed at people who need to grab a massive grab full of brake on a particularly unwieldy bike loaded with. I think it's for cargo bikes in mainland Europe.
Yeah,
which I think is amazing, probably. But, putting it on, and I don't know. There's also things like it's just the bite point of the lever's so far away that I can't even get any feel, even if I wanted to. So it's like fundamentally not a great
this is a
execution
brake
of the thing.
that you can grab hard and the wheels don't lock up. Now, that's canty brakes. We've gone full circle. Just stick.
Yes.
If you want these, just get an old bike out of someone's shed, fiddle with your canty brakes for 4 or 5 days to get them set up. It won't make any difference how you set them up because they never worked and they never will work. So brakes that don't work,
is it? They're meant to. I think it doesn't work on mud. Is my ultimate finding. It's all very well on like hard pack or anything that's like rock. You can probably brake as hard as you want. It's probably amazing. But at the moment,
So I mean, I got a chance to. Well, basically, I just car park tested them in Peebles in I think October or September. I think it was.
It would have been, yeah.
Yeah, it was on a Mondraker, I think. Is that what it's on?
They're all
at the moment?
Mondrakers, crafty e-bikes.
Yes, and there's an awful lot of gubbins that goes along with it. There's like multiple hoses going.
It looks like
brakes.
telemetry, doesn't it? It's like ooh.
It does, yeah.
Yeah, and it's only on the front as well. It's only on the front.
Despite the fact there's sensors on the back as well. So how come it's got all the sensors and all the gubbins going into the back wheel, and yet the ABS only works on the front?
Because the back sensor is a lift sensor that is to, if it knows the back wheel's coming off the ground, again, I don't think it does this on anything that's off-road, but if you put it on urban, I don't even know what it's called, lower than city mode, if the rear wheel knows it's off the ground via the sensors at the back, then it would tell the front brake to let go, please, before you go over the bars or whatever.
The sensors at the back will be measuring the speed of the bike, and if the front wheel's starting to lock up, it'll be going slower than the rear wheel, then it will know to let it off.
I think it probably is quite complicated. It'll be involving things like torque and resistance, won't it, and hub load. I don't think it's just doing speed, but it will factor that in as well.
I had a ABS on an off-road motorbike, KTM 690, and it was great when you over-brake and you're overcooking things, and but if you're going down slabs and things like that and you're relying on the front brake and it just suddenly just turns itself off, and so you end up riding a lot faster than you planned. And I didn't like it at all.
Well, the other thing is it's almost as like a personal you get a reviewer's are human beings, and sometimes you like the idea of a product, and sometimes you don't like the idea of a product, and then you realise that both things. I thought, was hoping the ABS would be good, and it isn't. And I thought this carbon thing would, maybe it's not total bollocks, but I thought it'd be like, I bet you can't really tell any difference. And it's amazing, and there's a big difference. So, it totally usurped both, I don't know what you call them, expectation, prejudices. Because this, but you can get you put coils in forks, don't you? You avoid everything about the warranty. You can get them vorsprunged or pushed. You can put coils in. And it wrecks all the seals.
Into your air shock.
Yeah, so you can never run them as air ever again. That is no different than a volume spacer. So if you want to flog on your fork or make it air again for some reason, it's not ruined it. So although it costs 120 quid, cheaper than a coil conversion. Well, cheaper than a coil conversion. How much does it cost? Oh, 120 quid, I think, probably. Don't actually know. So it's 100 and something.
But it's activated carbon, so that's...
Yeah, but people are going to compare this because people are people. You can get volume spacers for 10 quid. It's not a volume spacer. It's a coil conversion kit in disguise that doesn't wreck your fork. And you don't have to buy a spring that's your exact body weight. It's amazing. I can't believe it is. But there you go.
And the point here is you've got actually no idea how it works.
I've not looked at it yet. I mean, I feel like I don't really... It's like when I don't think it serves anyone any good to find out loads of information before you use something, because you're going in with loads of, that's that thing doing that thing. No, find the thing, see if you can detect the thing it's doing first, and then when you read about it, you can get, so that's what was causing that. A bit like you don't really want to know the geometry of a bike before you ride it, or anything. It's like it just disposes you to a certain outcome. It might be reviewed this coming week. When's this podcast out?
I was about to say, when are we going to learn all about this new remarkable activated charcoal shot fork device?
Probably be the week commencing March 20th.
Right. Okay. So watch out.
Probably a bit optimistic, but yeah.
Well, yeah, you've got all next week to actually learn actually how it works, haven't you?
Mark, you just said activated charcoal.
I know I did.
Oh, okay.
I did that deliberately. So, right, before we disappear off and let Hannah come in with her interview, what have we got? It's the weekend for us here. We're recording this on Friday. What are you up to this weekend, Charlie?
Geez. It's Friday, isn't it?
It's Friday today, all day.
What's going on? Tonight is Scout sledging night, so I'm going to borrow the snow bike out of Hannah's garage. If I can get...
we have a snow bike. I forgot we have a single track snow bike,
don't
we?
Snow bike. So I'm going to try. It's not a fat bike. It's a suspension bike on skis. And so it's remarkably effective, and it's quite handy in the air. And I'm more confident over snow than rocks, it turns out. And I don't know. I'll make it up as I go on from there. I think it's we've got snow all weekend, so I think it would just be dog walking and wine.
Good mix there. Benji, what are you up to this weekend?
I think I still will be going out on maybe tomorrow, Saturday. Definitely Sunday, and I'll be riding something that is embargoed until the 21st of March, and it's a very big launch for a very big company. So I shall be giving as much time to that as possible, and initially seeing how it works in how much snow that is. I don't know. A few inches of snow outside, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
I shall be required. I shall be using it. I shall be on an assisted machine, so I'll be out there wearing
How
all
much
of
snow
the
have you
clothes.
got, Benji?
It's hard telling it. Oh, look at the
Benji's
car.
standing
Not
up
a lot.
looking out
2
this window
inches
now.
maybe, but it's quite. It's
right.
good snow.
We got about a foot on the ground and drifts at as high as dry stone walls up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's good. The
Same
kids
over here.
are out.
We are it's weird, isn't it? Because geographically, we're all within a 10-mile triangle of each other.
Yeah.
And but yes, so I'll be going out and playing in the snow, and I might even get I've got a hill behind my house. I might even get the snowboard out and have a mess around on that. We shall have a see. Right, at that point, that's us for this week. So join us again next week. And right now, we're going to hand over to Hannah. Over to you, Hannah.
Hi, so now I have Vedangi Kulkarni joining me. Hi, Vedangi.
Hello, nice to be here.
And Vedangi is organising a MTB for All race up in Fort William. So I thought we'd catch up and see what that's all about. So Vedangi, what's different about your race?
So through MTB for All, so first of all, MTB for All is a downhill mountain bike race. What's different about the race? It's about making mountain bike racing more inclusive. And by that, I mean having categories for adapted bikes. I mean having categories for non-binary folks. I also mean just having the vibe as friendly as it can be and as welcoming as it can be. And yeah, I guess that's what I mean by creating that inclusive environment for mountain bike racing. And the idea is to do all of that without taking away from the challenge that mountain biking brings. So the idea is that people will still ride technical trails, slightly harder level trails, but there will be beelines. There will be ways to make it easier for yourself, but there will also be subtle ways to push yourself to, do the actual features. So yeah, that's basically MTB for All. It's happening on 25th and 26th of March at Fort William, at Nevis Range in Fort William. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. So far I've got about, I want to say 7 adaptive racers doing this thing. So that's probably the most we've seen so far, because I don't know if you knew, in 2021 I organized first ever race for adaptive mountain bikes in the UK. That was down at Gorton Gravity Hub, and we had like 2 adapted races. We had Casey and Spencer. This year, I'm thinking that we have got 7. It's absolutely nuts. I really hope everyone has a good time.
And so if you want to enter, first of all, you go to the British Cycling website. Is that right? And enter
yes,
there.
yeah. So on British Cycling website, there's the events page, and on events page you can find MTB for All -1. Because I wanted this to be a series of events. So one is just basically, this is the first of them.
It's £50 to enter, and then another £1 if you're not a British Cycling member. Is that right? Like an admin fee?
Yeah, it's £50 to enter, and I think £1 admin fee whether or not you're a British Cycling member. Okay. But if you do want points from the race, so I'm pretty sure this is one of the first races of this season where you can get points. And considering all the hype around the World Champs happening at Nevis Range, I guess this is your chance to race the same track that pros from all around the world will be racing.
Cool. So, in terms of the race track, will everybody be using the same track, and then you just choose whether to have the beelines, or are there different tracks for different categories?
Everybody races the same track. That is the plan. So you start on the World Cup track. You start on the Oakley Wall Ride, which is in the bottom section of the World Cup track. So to get there is a fire road to ride up or push up or whatever. You start from there, you go down, there is a river gap which has a beeline around it. This river gap was broken back in November when the race originally was meant to be. So that's why we had to postpone the race, because it was really unsafe to ride because of the flood damage. Anyway, so down from there's beelines around that. Down from there, you kind of get off from the World Cup track and you go down 1 dot, which is like an orange track, but it's got, really nice big berms and wide track and some jumps. And then you go into the 4 cross track, which is, again, like everything is rollable in there. There is a little rock section. You can either take that technical rock section or you can completely miss it and do a couple of rollable jumps on the side. And then the 4 cross track basically joins back onto the World Cup track. And there's there's like 3 rollable drops, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, there are 3 rollable drops before the finish line on the World Cup track. So I would say it's about 2 minutes long, the whole sort of trail. But yeah, that's the track. Everything is rollable or has a beeline, and yeah, the idea is that everyone rides the same track, and still having some challenging bits to it, because obviously you're going to find roots and rocks in somewhere like Nevis Range.
And so if like a bunch of women, say, wanted to enter, and they're all in the same age category, one of them might turn up on a hardtail, one of them might turn up on a full suspension enduro bike, one of them might turn up on a downhill bike, and they would all be in the same category together if they were all the same age.
Yes, so there's an open category actually. So if this is your first race, or if you're just not sure about the track, or just not sure about the conditions, aren't fussed about the points, just join in the open category. Come here to have fun. Because I guess you can have fun in whatever category you're in, but if you're on a hardtail and if you're not too fussed about like the actual racing side, or I guess if this is your first race, then join in for the open, join in the open category, because that's what it's there for.
So if you are an adaptive rider and you want to enter, what do you do? Because I see there's no category on the British Cycling website for entering there.
Yes, that's correct. So if you're an adapted rider, you get in touch with me directly on email, on Instagram, wherever you find it most comfortable. There's a page called MTB for All on Instagram as well, so look that up and you can get in touch with me on there, or my personal page at Wheels and Words. So British Cycling actually don't they don't have it through them, so this has to be run completely separately. And it's the same event, but I've made it so that it's all together but still separate. For example, the practice times and race times for adapted riders would be, say, in the first half of the day, and then two-wheeled riders for the second half of the day. That way everyone's on the same track, the same thing is happening, but there is some separation between these two events. It's the same race, it's still MTB for All, and that's the whole plan. Like, the idea is that everyone races the same track and has the same sort of challenges, and that's sort of the idea. Also, from the safety point of view, we've gone a bit above and beyond in putting this together. So there's a whole separate risk assessment done for adapted riders. The track is wide enough for a bowhead bike or whichever bike you choose to ride. So I'm working with people who are able to tell whether or not the adapted bike of your choosing will be okay down this particular track. But also I will be holding a separate briefing for the marshals and everyone to tell them the extra stuff to look for. So that's why I'm also looking for extra marshals at this race, so that everything is as safe as it can be, because this is my responsibility and I'm taking it very seriously. And there's a reason that adapted racing wasn't a major part in mountain biking before, because the governing bodies don't exactly support it that well. But now new things are coming up, and they are getting on board slowly but surely, and having races like these, that's the way they're gonna get on board. So showing that this can be done, showing that we can be, as organizers, as event organizers, we can be careful, we can have all of these measures, extra measures in place, and that safely everyone can still have a good time on a bike, I guess. That's the whole idea. And I think showing race like this isn't an example. I think definitely fingers crossed that Scottish cycling, British cycling get on board.
So you are you're groundbreaking here for the UK's adaptive racing, because in the US we've seen in the past 12 to 18 months there's been an increase in adaptive racing, and some of those courses are gnarly.
I know. I've been actually speaking to some race organizers up there about how they do it and how they make it safe, and where do they get the insurance from and things like that. Because currently I'm having to tell all the racers to arrange their separate insurance, and that's possible. And but still, how are like North American countries doing it? So I've been talking to those race organizers about it. But yeah, in the UK this is very new. I think my race, a couple of races down south, but also Malvin's Classic, I remember last year had an adaptive category. But yeah, it all started 2 years ago, November 2021 actually, at that race in Gorton Gravity Hub. It was proper stressful organizing that one, because I didn't know a lot of people in mountain biking, well, cycling industry in general, but also I knew nothing about organizing a mountain biking race. I, as an endurance athlete, I just had the sponsors that I was working with, and so they got on board and they said that, okay, these are the people we know, these are the people that can provide you with prizes and stuff. And I don't know, like, I knew nothing about organizing a race, and I still am quite shocked that that race was quite successful. Like, people were emailing me for months after saying that, they've been to other races since, and that race was the most fun they had. And
good.
I don't know how that happened, but we had like over 40 women. Nearly 25% of the field was women. Like, that doesn't happen in downhill racing, does it? I mean, so it was really cool. And I want to, like, the reason I talk about like inclusivity in mountain bike racing is because there needs to be more of that, and that can only happen when that vibe is created, when the messaging is fun.
I think a lot of people that are like having a go at an event for the first time might go to something more like a festival or an enduro, because there's a sense that you kind of get to hang out with your mates and you get more riding across the course of a weekend, whereas sometimes the perception of downhill is kind of you stand in a queue waiting for uplift and you get 3 runs down in a weekend, and you probably spend half your time on the ground falling off if you're a beginner as well.
Yeah, my first man bike race was Ardrock last year, and it was absolutely nuts. I didn't think, like, I couldn't believe that for my first man biking race there were bits that I was meant to ride fast blind. It was like the whole concept was so nuts to me. But I'm really happy that I managed it, because since then, like, now I've signed up for Mega Avalanche.
Okay. I hope you've got
Which
full set of pads. And nothing important to do in the weeks afterwards.
I know, right? Well, nothing important. I just have a little man biking holiday in Morzine coming up the week after. But yeah, all in all, yeah, should be fun.
Cool. So I guess you're kind of ploughing the way for the adaptive categories in the UK, and hopefully that's something that will grow. I mean, the technology on the bike side of things has moved on, as well as, I guess, the medical outcomes for people who have kind of spinal injuries or disabilities that might stop them previously of getting onto a bike or getting out there and kind of enjoying the outdoors. So it seems like this is probably a field that can only grow.
Absolutely.
Is your sense that there is support from the sporting bodies to like, are they looking at you going, what the heck is she doing? Make it go away? Or are they looking at you and going like, yeah, this is interesting. Tell us about it.
Well, I'm trying to go for the latter. So I'm really hoping that that's what's happening, that they're more curious about how this is actually working out. And I guess that's what's keeping me motivated to some extent as well, because once the governing bodies get involved, anything like this really like does blow up, so then it's going to get even bigger and better and I guess better organized as well, because there's some money behind it.
It should at least make it easier for organizers to deal with some of the administration or the insurance, as you say, like if there is a format to like, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Rather than having to reinvent it every time as an individual.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. So currently one of the safety measures I have in place is that every adaptive rider, when they're doing their practice run or race run, should have a 2-wheeled rider riding behind them. And that's like one of the safeguarding rules. And I don't know why I thought that was a good idea, but it worked last time, because there were some corners where I remember like Casey needed some help to get round, or like the bike she wasn't quite used to the bike because it wasn't the right size, something like that. And the rider behind, on an able-bodied rider on a two-wheeled man bike, was able to sort of help with that. And that still counts as a race run, you know? Like it's not one of the purest bike packing, gotta be unsupported and solo and all that.
Well,
like this is very much much still a work in progress.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense. I was out on a ride with Neil from the Experience Kick, and
Neil Russell.
Yes,
he
came
he's
out
amazing.
on
He's helped me out so much.
His previous Lasher trike before he got his new one, and well, he needed his new one after he'd been out for a gravel ride with us because his bike broke on a descent, and it really illustrated how you were completely stuck at that point. And if he'd been on his own, he'd have been left there. It was a spot with no phone reception, and like you get cold quickly when you can't. Like you couldn't just get up and walk out. That wasn't an option. Like if my bike broke, I would just leave it there, or I'd push it out, or I'd carry it out, or whatever. But that wasn't an option for him. So like between us all, we like had to keep warm, and eventually I managed to get a Land Rover from a farm that came and picked him up and then took him into town, and then he could get back to his car and that kind of thing. But it was quite an illustration in the fact that you do need a little bit more consideration. Like going off into the wilds by yourself where there's no phone signal probably isn't the greatest option.
No, I'm really hoping that races like this set an example to the fact that this can be done with difficulty, but it is possible. And you just gotta want to organize something like this. I think there's a lot of unbotheredness sometimes. It's like a very British thing. Until I came to the UK the first time, I didn't even know that I can't be bothered was a thing. What's the term? I can't be arsed. That one. So I think there's a lot of that, because I was a bit like, if it's hard, we can still do it though, right? It can still be done though. And oh God, like when I organized this in 2021, it was an absolute nightmare. I was crying probably every single day. And I remember my partner telling me in front of me, this is fine, but people are not going to take you seriously if you do this. When you're talking to them, just tone down the desperation a little bit. And I was just like, but I don't know anything about this. I need help.
Well, it seems like that was a success, and you've forgotten about the challenges of it. So I'm very glad that you can be bothered to do it again. Apart from getting people to head up to the Nevis Range and enter and race, is there anything else that you need for that weekend that maybe people listening might be able to help you out with?
Yes, so I need marshals because
as
I said,
any
ever,
race organizer needs that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely need help with marshals, but also I've realized that this race doesn't quite need chip timings. So I've currently kept like all the quotations from people who do timing equipment on hold, because they all offer chip timings and it's all very expensive. This is a not-for-profit race, so I'm not making any money from this, but also all the proceeds basically go to Wings for Life or someone who's currently recovering from a spinal cord injury. So I need to keep the costs low. So if there's anyone who offers the laser timing system, I'm already speaking with a couple of people about this, but in case nothing comes up from there, if anyone knows like anyone with access to the laser timing system, please do help me out. And I think I have come to a point where I've currently accepted the fact that I'm going to have to go on Amazon and probably buy those radios that marshals use, walkie-talkies, because I've been looking at places to hire them out, and no luck so far. So again, this is something I'm speaking with someone like later today. But yeah, if you have access to them, that would be great help too. Currently, I every time I ask for help, it just makes me sound a little less organized. But I guess it's all part of the process, and I'm currently saying no to anything that's too expensive. So it's not like there aren't options. It's just that the options are really expensive, and I'm still raising funds for this. I have like 1.5 more grand to raise before the race, because I can barely afford the venue fees at this point. Luckily, it's all to be paid after the race, but still,
Okay.
I know this is all possible because the first time round I had 6 weeks to organize the whole race at Gorton, and it was possible. It was done. It was great. So I'm fortunate that I know people and brands that can help out with things. It's just helping out, getting the help like quick enough to pay people on time and stuff.
Well, it sounds like an awful lot to do. So if people are listening and think, yes, I can help out in some way, then get in touch with Vedangi. And if you can't help out but you want to race, then it's the 25th, 26th of March.
Yeah.
This year. So thank you very much, Vedangi. Thank you for being bothered, and all the best with the race.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.